بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. We left off in greater sins, talking about qadhaf, about accusing a pious person of adultery. So we left off with the story where one of the companions was with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and this companion had a servant. And one day the companion is walking with the Imam, but he couldn't find his servant. And then finally he found him, and he was mad at him for leaving. So he called him, a bad term. He called him, "Oh, son of adulteress," or something people say like Ibn Zina or Haram Zadeh, these type of terms. So he said, "Oh, son of adulteress, where were you?" So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he hit his forehead, and he said, how come you can accuse his mother of adultery? I saw some good in you, but now everything has left from you. With this one sin that he did, all the goodness that he was doing left. So the companion, he said that, oh, his mother is from India. She's a mushrik. So Imam said, don't you know that all people have their type of marriage? And he said, get away from me with this, this type of bad mentality, that he doesn't want to be associated with it. So other narration said that all people have their kind of marriage due to which they protect themselves from adultery. So we explained on how some people convert to Islam later, but Islam recognizes their marriage. It doesn't make them get remarried according to the Islamic way. So he's saying that he's bringing this story to show that how the Imam viewed someone who abused someone else with these type of terms. He says, apart from the grave accusations like adultery or sodomy, it's also haram to use abusive language for a Muslim who doesn't openly indulge in evil acts. It's not allowed to abuse him with words, calling him transgressor, a dog, drunk, pig, or even calling someone with these words is haram, calling out to someone in these words. He said it's haram to associate people with a disease or handicapped, like blind, lame, or deaf, to use this in an insulting way. According to Islamic law, a person who uses abusive language should be given a light punishment or reprimanded from this. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he said that the person who calls another one a sinner, indecent, kafir, munafiq, a disbeliever or a hypocrite, or a donkey, he should be given 39 lashes. This is in the times of the Imam. This is the punishment. He said there's no difference if such words are used for relatives or strangers, or against a student or a servant. Any bad words which mention the private parts or the indecent acts are haram, whether addressed to one who is an open sinner or whether he gets offended or not. Because sometimes someone says, oh, he doesn't mind me calling him that. It's still haram to do that. So this is where we left off. He brings some narrations. He says a lot of narrations have been brought to censor bad words, abusive language. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, abusive language is an atrocity, and atrocity is deserving of hellfire. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa said, there are four people, the intensity of whose chastisement will also annoy the other people of hell. So their punishment is so bad that it's going to bother other people. He said there would be a person who blissfully used abusive and foul language in the world. Means he doesn't care. He says whatever he wants to. He calls people all sort of bad names. He said, in hell, pus and blood will flow from his mouth. This will be the punishment for doing this sin in the afterlife. It's something maybe people take lightly, and they think, oh, we just call people. I've seen it a lot. All countries I go to, I've always seen either calling someone haywan, an animal, or kalb, or a dog, or other thing, khinzir, pig, and they use a insulting language between each other, like really offensive language. Not just some light joking, but they use some really strong offensive language toward each other. So Imam is saying that we shouldn't do this, and there's a punishment for this type of sin in hellfire if we don't repent from these things. He said, they mentioned a lot of other narrations about this before, so he said he is not going to mention more of them here. We have to remember to use, using this foul, abusive language towards each other, the vulgar language, it's unbecoming of a Muslim. It's not in the akhlaq of a Muslim. If imagine someone comes to Islam and they come to view the Muslims and they see each other swearing at each other like that, calling each other bad names. They said, we don't do this ourselves. Why would I go join them so they could abuse me and call me bad names? It would push people away from Islam. It doesn't have a good, good reputation in any culture. No one, looks at calling each other abusive things as something good. And we have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala witnesses all our deeds. And when we do this, it should deter us from these things, keeping Allah present in mind. And it cannot be like these people who doing haram and using Allah's name at the same time. I've seen people doing this. There's talking amongst each other, drinking. You see them like outside or somewhere, and they'll be like, someone's holding a beer and there's a mashallah, mashallah to something else, talking to somebody, or wallahu al-adim, and at the same time, because it's in their language that they're using, but at the same time they're committing haram and using Allah's name. So Allah's name doesn't mean anything to them. So we have to make sure that we remember, when we remember Allah, it affects our heart, it affects ourselves, it affects us to keep us from sinning. He said it must be understood that as it is haram to initiate abusive language, it's also haram to abuse and reply to it. He said this strictly applies to words that denote this sin, qadhaf, accusing someone of adultery or sodomy. But he says for other abuse, like people calling someone ignorant or something like this, it's permissible to say the same thing back. When we look at this here, everything that is permissible is also doesn't mean we have to do it. Some things are permitted, but in akhlaqi way, it could be, it doesn't carry a punishment, but at the same time, it's not the best mode to do, and the best thing to do. So we see he says this because we have ayat in Quran. It says, whoever then acts aggressively against you, inflict injury on him according to the injury that was inflicted on you. And whoever defends him after his being oppressed, these it is against whom there is no way to blame. And if you take your turn, then retaliate with the like of what you were afflicted with. Meaning that if someone afflicted you with something, they said something to you and you responded to them with similar way, you were upset and you responded similar way, this takes the blame from you. But it's the best way is forgiveness and to mention to them, not to do these type of things and to call Allah to account and these type of, a better way to do it with akhlaq. He says, Imam Qadhim alayhi salam says about two people who are abusing each other verbally. From the two of them, the one who started it is more unjust. His sin includes the sin of abusing as well as the sin of the one who has cursed him back in reply. But the oppressed one shouldn't exceed the limit. He says it means that a person who is abused should retaliate only with words that equal the abuse. He shouldn't use more abusive language, otherwise his sin will be equal to the sin of the one who initiated it. It's better to reply, as Holy Quran has says, The true servants of the most compassionate are those who walk on the earth humbly. And when the foolish address them improperly, they only respond with peace. They say, qalu salam. They say salam. So they don't get involved with that. They don't go back and forth. They don't argue with ignorant people. As the saying goes, it takes two hands to clap. So, that we're only making noise if we're both involved and the parties are involved and they're feeding back and forth to each other, going back and forth, then that's where the problem comes. But we should respond to them better. He says, for example, if one calls another person a donkey and he replies calling them a dog, this would be exceeding the limits. Or if one calls them a donkey only once and the other person responds by calling him the same word twice, it would constitute an excess. If a person who has uttered a bad word seeks forgiveness immediately before he is replied to, he must be forgiven. In this case, it is not allowed to reply even with the same words. Sometimes we can go from, being the oppressed one, someone who swore at us, we are oppressed in that moment. And then we end up becoming the oppressor. How come? How can that be? How can you go from being oppressed to becoming the oppressor? For example, someone backbites about you or says something behind your back, and to one person. Then you decide you want to go get revenge on that person, and you go not to the extent that they did, but you go even more than that, and you go to a crowd of people, and you tell everyone in that place about this person and how you say bad things about them in a group of people. Now you have surpassed the sin that that person did to you, and you went from being the oppressed one to the oppressor. And someone calls you one name, then you call them 10 names, and you keep going and going and going with more insults. Now that person who was oppressing you, he has become oppressed. So it's best not to feed into that type of behavior, and do as Quran said and reply with peace. Don't be aggressive back towards them. He said it must be emphasized that although it is permitted to retaliate in equal measure, it's best to remain silent. This is what I was saying, that sometimes things are permissible to do, but it's better not to do. Even though it's allowed, it's better to refrain. Quran says, and the recompense to evil is punishment like it, but whoever forgives and amends, he will have his reward with Allah. Surely he does not love the unjust. So Allah says here, you can retaliate with the equal thing to it, the punishment. You can retaliate with what was done to you. You can retaliate with that back, but it's better to forgive and make amends. Another place Allah says, it is nearer to righteousness that you should relinquish. So we see here that this is the best course to take. But if someone responded to that person and with the same thing, then they are not to be blamed for that. He says, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari narrates that Imam Ali alayhi salam saw that a man was abusing Kambar. Kambar is one of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was killed in the service of Imam Ali. So Kambar was loyal to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So Kambar was about to reply to that person who abused him. Imam Ali alayhi salam called out to Kambar. He said, stop. Humiliate the one who curses you by remaining silent. In this way, the beneficent Allah will be satisfied with you, and the shaitan will be angry, and you will be able to hurt your enemy in this way. You will please that Allah who splits the seed and causes pleasant winds to blow. No one can please Allah more with his forbearance. Similarly, nothing makes shaitan more angry than silence in return of abuse. The revenge taken from an ignorant person in this way is not possible in any other way. A lot of times, the person, even they get more, Imam is saying take revenge on them by being silent. Sometimes someone wants to argue with you, But when you're silent towards them and you don't respond, they get even more angry, and they keep sending more abuses, keep trying to keep the thing going. But if you don't reply, who are they going to argue with? I remember one time I had a problem with my baggage. I was in New Jersey, connecting to fly overseas, and they wanted me to like repay for my baggage. And I had the tickets, and I said I paid for my baggage already. And they said, no, that was just for this first flight, leg of the flight, not the other leg. I've never heard of anything like this. They were trying to charge everybody. The guy kept getting really upset with me, and he started like losing it really big, like yelling and slamming his hands on the table, and he was cursing. And I just stood there. I was like, I'm sorry this is getting you so upset. I don't have anything to do with it. I paid for the bags, and I did my part, and I've showed you receipt, and sorry it's getting you so upset, sir. But he kept getting even more and more angry. But if I would have responded with swearing back at him and being angry with him, doing that, it probably would have taken me away and put me in the jail and God knows what else. So a lot of times you cannot let the other person affect your mood to change you to be angry like they are. If they're doing something bad, we have to think about it, recognize it. This is a bad trait that they're doing. I'm not going to let them bring me down to their level. He says, if a person who is abused responds with kind and gentle words like, do not abuse your brother, he occupies a very high position with Allah. This person, so someone swears at you, another Muslim, for example, will say, I'm your brother in Islam. Why would you talk to me like that? Don't you know that the respect of your Muslim brother is similar to the respect or the sanctity of Holy Kaaba, for example? Would you abuse the Holy Kaaba? Of course not. So why would you abuse me? Bring them back to the remembrance of Allah. Bring them back to the words of Ahlul Bayt, because when they are in this state doing these things, they are not thinking clearly. They're not thinking about Allah. They're not thinking about Imam. They're not thinking about Ahlul Bayt. They're not thinking about Quran. They are just angry. And a lot of people have problem controlling their anger. So we have to learn how to diffuse the situation without throwing gasoline on the fire. Says the Quran says, and not alike are the good and the evil. Repel evil with what is best. So we have to, when evil is coming at us, we need to repel it, but repel it with good akhlaq, repel it with the best way. We have to remember and think about how Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam would have handled these situations. A lot of times we would see that, I remember a story of Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, and he was walking with his companions towards a masjid, and this farmer started abusing him, cursing at him, saying bad things to him. The companions wanted to beat this guy up. They were like, let us take care of it. We are not going to let him talk to you like that. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and go to the masjid. I'll meet you there. Just wait on me over there. We'll have our class. So Imam stayed and talked with that farmer. What is going on? What's going on? What's wrong with you? Anything going on in your life? I'm here. I would like to talk to you about it if you want to. And the guy was saying that he was upset and he lost his temper because he had lost his crop that year before. And this year is also not growing, and he doesn't have money, and he's dependent on that thing. And so he's frustrated because of his financial situation. So he took it out on the Imam. And the Imam gave him some money. He said, I want to give you money for the crop that you lost last year and also for this year. And the Imam paid him for the crops. And the man got very happy. And he said he apologized for what he said to him. And then he admitted that he shouldn't have said those things. And then he became fond of the Imam. And he actually followed the Imam to the masjid. And the companions were surprised to see him there. And he was like, I know best how to deal with this. You wanted to go aggressively toward this man, and maybe they would have beat him up. And what would have come of that? Nothing. He would have just got more angrier, and always held that anger and harbored anger against Imam, and end up going to hellfire because he's harboring enmity towards Ahlul Bayt alayhi wasalam. But in the way the Imam dealt with him, he got him to see his mistakes, and also he came towards the path of Ahlul Bayt. So we have to make sure that what we do and how we respond to people who are insulting, we don't push people away. They narrate the story in the book about a Syrian man who came to Medina. This Syrian man came to Medina, and he saw a handsome man on a camel, and he asked about it, who that was. They said, this is Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. The man from Syria got upset. He got angry when he heard the name of Imam Hassan. He said, are you the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Imam replied, yes, I'm the son of Ali. He said, you are the son of a person who was a mushrik. Na'udhu billah. Imagine someone talking to Imam Hassan like this and calling Imam Ali a mushrik. Then he kept abusing the Imam until he got tired of abusing the Imam. Imam remained silent. He didn't say anything. At last, that person felt ashamed that he kept abusing this man. He kept abusing Imam Hassan. The Imam saw that he felt sorry about what he was doing. So the Imam said to him, are you a traveler? Are you from Syria? The Imam said, yes. Imam Hassan said, if you need a place to stay, we will give it to you. If you need money, we will give it to you. If you have any other problem, we will help you. So the Syrian man, he got ashamed, and he couldn't even find any words. And then the following are his words later. He said, after I had the good fortune of enjoying the hospitality of Imam Hassan ibn Ali, I found his personality more likable than that of any other person in the world. So we see that the Imam, how he dealt with this. Most of us, someone swear at us, we're going to lose it and go and start calling him or her all sort of names, start calling their swearing and abusing their parents and everybody else. It said Imam Hassan alayhi salam offered similar type of hospitality to another Syrian man who also became his devout follower. So in the other case, I remember the Syrian man, what he said that he called Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam some very bad names. And at the end of it, he said that after the Imam offered him these things, he said, before I thought of you and your father as the worst of people, but now I see that you are the best of people in the eyes of Allah. You are the best of creations. And that man, he stayed with Imam Hassan alayhi salam and served the Imam and became one of the Shia of Imam Hassan. But imagine if we turned and we swore back at him. We started cursing back at that person. What is that going to do? Nothing but push them further away. They thought that, these people from Syria were victim of being brainwashed from Muawiyah, because Muawiyah, he told many bad things about Imam Ali alayhi salam that weren't true. They cursed Imam Ali alayhi salam from the minbar for 80 years. Everyone thought Imam Ali alayhi salam was mushrik or kafir, and when they came to find out when he died, when Imam Ali alayhi salam died, when he was struck with the sword in Kufa during Salatul Subh, Salatul Fajr, they found out that he died in Salat. So the Syrian people were really surprised. They said, how come he is killed in Salat? We didn't even know. Did Ali pray? This is what they thought about Amir al-Mu'mineen. They thought that he didn't even pray, that he wasn't even a Muslim, that he was an enemy of Allah and an enemy of the Prophet. They were a product of this, propaganda from their government or from their ruler, from Muawiyah. So this is the problem. We cannot even, most of the time, even when we see that people are abusing Prophet, it's because of bad propaganda. If they really knew who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, they wouldn't abuse him. If people really knew who Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were, and what their standing and what their position, the glimpse of what we know of their, maqam or their position, they wouldn't abuse them. So when we see these people abusing Rasulullah, they most of the time they are ignorant and they don't know. And we cannot be like other groups of people. When they see someone abusing Rasulullah, they go and they want to kill them. It happened many times in Europe. I remember with those, people that would abuse the Prophet, they would try to kill them. We need to dialogue with them. We need to find out, why are you doing this? What is wrong with, what is the problem? Why do you think these things about the Holy Prophet? Why would you abuse him? What do you know about him? Most of the time they don't know anything. They haven't read Quran, they haven't read Hadith, they haven't read the life of Holy Prophet. They only hear what they've heard from generation and generation of other ignorant people, or they've just seen things in the news, false propaganda, all these type of things. So they do it out of ignorance. So we need to go and find out, get to the root of it. A lot of time they'll say things and they'll be based on, false allegations. And a lot of them, they do have those type of things in narrations, but they're in narrations of other books, not from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And those narrations, they are present in their books, but they are made by the enemies of Islam, those who were actually against Prophet in his lifetime, or opportunists. And those people, a lot of narrations are narrated by fabricators, but they are in books that are called Sahih. The Sahih is supposed to be everything is authentic in that book, but when we really delve and look into those books, we see that those books are not authentic, and a lot of those things go very clearly, they go against the core fundamental principles of Islam. So a lot of the Western people are reading these type of books, if they are reading. And also the image that those books paint of Rasulullah, that's not our Prophet. We don't believe in that. And it paints a very bad image of Prophet, and also glorifies a lot of people who are very bad. As one of my teachers used to tell me, those people who are terrorists, they have role models for their terrorism. They are in their books. Those people committed acts of terror, like Khalid ibn Walid. This person was very bad, but they call him Saifullah or Saiful Islam and all these type of things. But he did very bad things, and they take him as a role model. So if you're taking him as a role model, you also look up to him and see that he does those bad things, we do those bad things. We see that those people that fought Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Siffin, they also were Muslims. They read Quran. Both sides read Quran, but there's a big difference than the Islam of Ghadir and the Islam of Saqifa. So we have to look and see, the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. We don't have role models for terrorism. We see how the Imams responded to people when they were abused. If someone would have abused, can you imagine if someone would have abused Muawiyah or Yazid or Khalid or all these other people? What would have happened to them? They would have died. They would have not lived to tell about it. But we see that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam dealt with people with akhlaq and good morality. So we have to also take that example. I remember one time I was talking with my grandfather. My grandfather, he knows about Islam. He's traveled to Middle East in the military. He's been to many, there's not many countries in the world that he didn't go to. My grandfather was a navigator for airplanes. So he was the human GPS before we had the GPS navigation system. So he didn't like Islam. But then we started talking about it, and all the things he didn't like about Islam were things that weren't true. But they were, he was like, I found them. They're in the book. They showed me the book. I said, okay, yeah, they're there, but I don't believe in this. And this most of, our group of Muslims, Shia of Ahlul Bayt, we don't follow that. Our Imam said this. I show the total opposite. And I told him about, that these people are, not representing us. Our representatives are 12 imams. A lot of people after the Prophet did many bad things, and they, towards a lot of people, they killed many people. They did terrible things in the name of Islam, but that doesn't have anything to do with us. These people didn't even care about Rasulullah. They just left him there unburied, while the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam buried him. So these people don't represent us. And I told him about Imam Ali alayhi salam, and I describing the merits of Imam Ali. He fell in love with Imam Ali. He said, wow, this man sounds like Jesus Christ to him. And, my grandfather is a Christian. So, that's the highest position that they would hold in the entire creation or entire universe, is the status of Isa. So he said, Imam Ali sounds like Isa to him. So, subhanallah, the people, they don't know. And when they find out, they say, oh, wow, I didn't know there's two branches of this Islam. And I didn't know that you guys believed in this and other group believed this way. And, he was telling me that you need to make your teachings more known to people, so that they will see that there are Muslims that are good, Muslims that don't believe in the terrorism and don't believe in, don't take the role models that are in these other books that were doing acts of terror, killing people who didn't agree with them, or committing rapes and all of these other things. Those things are in their history and in their books. So most of the people, they think that we believe that way. So that's why they abuse us. That's why they treat us bad. But if we take some small time and just deal with people whoever comes with us, like in work, we're in our job, and they know that we are Muslim, for example, they don't know too much about us. We have a coffee with them or chai. We sit and talk with them, and they get to know us, and they say, well, Brother Muhammad's not too bad, or Sister Fatima, or Sister Zainab, or whoever is there. They say, all that stuff about Muslims, because they're all spooked out against Islam and against Muslims, all that Islamophobia, that we want to come and overthrow their country and establish Islamic, caliphate and all these type of things. And they have heard like so many bad things that about women's rights and domestic abuse and all sort of stuff, that they believe that our religion tells us to do these things. But when they meet us and then they realize, that we're not like that, it changes the perception. And imagine how many Muslims are in America. If everyone was dealing with somebody in the public, we could change the minds of many people. When they'll see many good attributes in us, and they say, oh, wow, how come you act like that? Anybody else would have got called, these type of names. They probably would have been fighting or insulting them back, but you responded like so elegantly and, with good manners and good morality. How come? Then we have the opportunity to share with them and tell them, our Imam, we learned from him, from Imam Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam, how he dealt with someone who swore at him, who swore at his father, and all of these type of things. So we have the opportunities every day. Most of us, because most people are going to some sort of job where they're dealing with other people. So to spread Islam, it doesn't mean that we need to go outside with a picket fence, those signs and say ayat and Quran and come and say, let me tell you about Islam and all of these things. The best effective method to spread Islam is to just be good to people, say good words to people, talk good, act good with them, be kind with people, caring, all of these things. This will attract people to Islam. But if we are, like they said in this chapter, someone swears at us and then we become the oppressor. We call them 100 bad words. They called us one thing, we call them 100 bad words. They will say, oh man, you don't want to mess with that one. I saw him, he cursed out everybody today. Or don't go near his desk, he might swear at you, or she might curse at you, or something like that. So we just have to keep Allah in mind, that Allah is witness of all of our deeds. And remember that Imam is watching our deeds are reported to Imam as well. And if we can constantly keep this in our mind, when we are presented an opportunity to do anything, we think, would this please Allah? Would this please our Prophet? Would this please our Imam? If it would, then we do it. If not, or if it's problematic, we say, I'm going to refrain from that, and I'm not going to do that because this thing might lead down to a bad path. And I don't want to incur Allah's wrath, or I don't want Imam to be disappointed in me. I don't want Imam to do to me what he did to that other person, to say, I don't find any good left in you when you have insulted this person's mother. Because who knows who we are with? We have to be good to everyone, because sometimes we could insult someone maybe, and maybe that person could be close to the Imam of our time, and we don't know. And we see that person, we say insulting things towards them. And then Imam would be disappointed with us and say, look at him, he claims to be one of my Shia, but look how he's abusing other people. I mentioned maybe before, I remember a story one of the Sheikh told me, and he said that they came to an Islamic center, and the people said, well, this lady was really rude to them. What are you doing here? Why are you here? And it started being, really nasty with them, and didn't even want to let them in. It was three guys. And, it was one Arab brother and two African-American brothers. So she was really rude to them, like they didn't belong there, and why are you there? And then they didn't respond any, bad way, and it's just, can you just please let us in? We have a meeting here tonight, and we want to come. And so they made their way in, and then later that night, they all came, and they're sitting in the majlis, and they all have a mama. All of them are scholars. And the same lady is coming around and handing tea to everyone, and she came to them. They said, like, she almost, the look on her face, because she thought she was just abusing someone who was a nobody, just some commoner person that's coming to the center. But in reality, she didn't know who they were, that they were the, speakers of the night, the guest of the masjid, the Islamic scholars. So you don't know who you're talking to, and you don't know who you're dealing with sometimes. So we have to be careful and ask Allah to help us control our anger, and to, have patience and forbearance, and to be able to deal with these type of things. And Allah has given us many stories in Quran, and we have many stories from Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam, and they're to serve as a reminder for us. So I think we have run out of time, and inshallah we'll pick up with this chapter, the next chapter, next week, inshallah.
First floor.
Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى